All right, let some folks come in here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next retail roundtable here, titled Staying Ahead of the Game, Mastering the Inventory Lifecycle for Independent Retailers. I think we're all in for a huge treat today. We have a wide variety of retail knowledge in the room with us here. Before I get to our awesome panelists, I just wanted to go over a little bit of housekeeping for the Zoom platform. This is an open conversation, so we want to hear from your questions. We've reserved a little bit of time at the end of this session for specific direct Q&A. So please, right down at the bottom, use the Q&A button and submit your questions to our panelists as they come up. And we may, as time allows, we may inject some questions in the middle, but we definitely will have some Q&A right at the end of the conversation here. The biggest question I get all the time, recording. Are we recording this? We absolutely are. We understand everybody is busy, so if you do need to duck out a little bit early, we are going to send a recording to each of our registrants, including some contact information for each of our panelists. If you have any follow-up questions, or maybe you're just a little too shy to ask it live, feel free and reach out afterwards. So if you're not familiar with Management One, thank you for joining us here today. So who is Management One? Well, our main purpose is to provide financial security for our people, our clients, and our retail experts. And we do that with a focus on merchandise intelligence and education for independent retailers like you. We like to keep our topics very relevant to not only the season, but topical news stories as well. And we operate with a set of core values, including a generous heart, courage, curiosity, adaptability, commitment, and collaboration. So on that note, speaking of collaboration, we've invited two of our wonderful partners to join us, along with Dane Cohen, our sales director here at Management One. I'll start with Melodie. You're actually in my lower left of the Hollywood squares here. Welcome, Melodie.
Thank you. I love being here and part of the Management One family. My background actually started out initially as a distributor for a number of years. So some of you on this call might know me from being a young woman with red hair and a white Sprinter van driving around the country, selling you clothes and helping you with your inventory problems when things didn't go as planned. And then I became a retailer in 2012 and had the blessing of working with Management One, and really just became really passionate about, being a retailer, our whole entire industry. And yet, the problem of unsold inventory never went away, right? Can I get an amen?
It never goes away.
Ultimately, I ended up building what is MaxRetail today, which is a platform that helps retailers with excess inventory to be able to optimize it and sell it off so that they can really be made whole, bring in inventory faster, pay rent, pay payroll. And that is my burning passion today, but I like staying close to Management One because we both share that desire to help retailers thrive, much like my friend Nick here at ONESHOP.
Welcome, Nick.
Wait, and Nico, I just want to chime in with one quick fun fact. My first call with a retailer when I started with Management One was with Melodie. So,
oh, full circle.
Full circle moment here.
Love it.
So I did not know that Mel was a distributor. I was also a distributor. It's where I started my career. We didn't call it, I was on the luxury side and we called it wholesale. So distributor is sort of a new thing for me. But so I was a wholesaler for a long time for luxury brands. And with that, I was traveling basically 30% of my year, both domestically and internationally, thousands of hours on retail floors, helping those stores sell my brand and find ways to sell my brand creatively. And so that put me on a path to starting what is now ONESHOP. I started that a few years back because I was tired of hearing people say, well, sales are down because there's no foot traffic. And so I started down this deep dive path of creative ways of how do we not rely on foot traffic? How do we actually predictably drive people to the store so we don't have to open the doors, fingers crossed that someone walks in and buys something. So we started ONESHOP, and basically ONESHOP is an all-in-one digital marketing tool that does anything you touches your customers from a client engagement standpoint, whether it's scheduling your social media posts, sending automations for text and email marketing, and then at the most personal level, clienteling and doing one-to-one communication via text and email.
Fantastic. And Mr. Dane Cohen, in addition to being our sales director, one of the things I like about this panel is all of you have deep-seated roots in inventory. So Dane, give us a quick background on prior to joining Management One.
Yeah, life before Management One. So I too was in the wholesale game for quite some time. I was the director of sale for Helmut Lang & Theory Men's. So I definitely know that side of the business. And then I actually went to work for a family-owned specialty chain of department stores where I was part of the retail and buying team and eventually the ownership team. So spent 7 years grinding it out in independent retail. So I know it well, and it's so gratifying now to be able to work with all the Management One clients out there and all the retailers that I'm able to speak with on a day-to-day basis. And I feel like this is like a little inside baseball because, Nick and I have our weekly call where we're always talking about what's going on in the industry, and Melodie, of course, we've been working with for quite some time, and at every industry event, we're always talking. So I'm really excited to kind of open up this conversation with our retail community because I think we're sitting at a really interesting time. So Nico, if you have anything else, I'm ready to
Please take it away.
Jump into action. So I wanted to start this call out with a piece of advice, and it was one of the first pieces of advice I got in retail from one of my mentors, and it has really stuck with me. And that is, good sales hides a multitude of sins. And the reason why I think that's so germane to this conversation is because the time we are sitting in right now. April, spring season is in full gear. And Nick, I'm actually going to start with you because you just said something that really was a light bulb moment for me, and that's the foot traffic part of this conversation. And so I think we're going to talk about two sides of the coin here, right? There's the client engagement side, there's the foot traffic, the marketing aspect, and then of course we're going to dive into inventory. But my first question kind of for you is, right now I think we're sitting in a place where the business comes, right? We get to April, the weather turns, I think I'm on the Northeast, we had some 75, 80 plus degree weather days. And you can imagine what that does for a retail business. That's like instant traffic by the hands of the gods. So, but my question is, right, what are the best practices to make sure that we're not just relying on the seasonal boost in traffic, but what should we really be doing to keeping that client engagement and maximizing this season, right? Because we don't want to just leave it open to, okay, I open my doors and my job is done. So what are some of the best tips you have out there to really keep clients engaged, especially at the height of the season?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I'm going to focus purely off where we operate, which is, the top, helping you sell at full price, or, we help it sell at discount too, but really helping, the minute that product hits your floor, or even before, pre-selling that product, how do you drive as many sales as possible without having to rely on just opening your doors and fingers crossed they walk in? So with us, we look at it in basically 3 different phases. I think you can take every phase of what we do, the 3 of us on this call, and break it down in these phases, which is phase 1, understanding where you stand today. So understanding your numbers. So we have a dashboard that we look at that says, all right, out of my whole customer base, what percentage of my customers shop 1 time? What percentage of my customers shop 2 times? 3 times, 4 times, et cetera, and so on and so forth. And then breaking that down on like an annual basis, looking at last year versus this year. So you can see how many customers basically are coming in the door, and then what's your ratio of repeat customers to new customers. That's basically all you need to know when it comes to what does my customer base look like? Do I have a lot of customers coming in once, then going away? Does most of my business happen from customers that shop literally every single week? You need to understand that before you do anything. And then you need to understand the levers that you have to actually affect those numbers. So we look at it from an entire marketing stack. So look at it as, okay, what are you doing from, obviously everybody sends out, or most people send out, if you're not, you probably should be doing this, a newsletter, a blast email once a week, but a lot of retailers stop at that. It's like, check, sweet, I'm engaging my customers, that's it. That's it. And they walk away and it's like, all right, I've got an open rate of 30%. This is awesome. Like, I'm doing everything I need to do on the marketing side. And that's just not the case. So then they'll be like, all right, let's post on Instagram. Great. Same thing. Broadcast communication that's throttled by the organic reach of Instagram. So it's marginally better than doing a newsletter. But we look at it in terms of, okay, you actually have to understand each of those cohorts of what's the new customer experience like? What is the second time purchaser customer experience like? And so on and so forth. And then look at, are you doing, email automations to say, personalized email automation saying, hey, Mel, or hey, Dane, I know you bought it a month ago. Just wanted to check in and see if there's anything that I can do to help you with that purchase. And then at the most personal level, especially for your VIPs, there's no excuse, zero excuse to not be reaching out to them personally, saying, when they said they have a wedding that they bought that stuff for, following up after that wedding. When they say they had to come in because their daughter's prom was happening, touching base after that prom. So really trying to be personal with the information you learned at the store. And then basically a third step is optimizing for that. So once you understand what those levers are, how are you strategically layering on new channels to build off of? And that's kind of the approach we take to, let's say, driving foot traffic or driving sales at the beginning of the season.
Right. And I think, you touched on something there that's so important, right? We want to maximize full price selling, right? So a lot of what we talk about sometimes is in the aftermath, like, right? What do we do when we're already at the end of the season and we have excess goods, but we are in the height of the season and we want to maximize that full price selling to the best of our potential. So, one of the things, and this was a tip that I used to do, and it was pretty staggering what this was able to drive as a retailer. And I'm sure technology has gotten far more sophisticated by this point, but I used to pull from my POS system, and it was a little cumbersome. So Nick, I'm sure you have some solutions that make this a heck of a lot easier. But I used to pull who were my top spenders spring of LY. Who are my top spenders that have not returned to shop with me this year? And sometimes it's as simple as, my biggest spending customer, it's April 18th and they have not stepped foot in this spring season. Someone needs to pick up the phone and say, hey, Susie, where you been? We have some amazing new spring arrivals.
Yeah,
Dane, I learned that the hard way one year. In South Florida, I had an amazing, amazing April and May. It was gangbusters. And then all of a sudden, the traffic was gone. And I ran that report of the top customers and I called them as quick as I could. And they all said, I've already gone back north because my store was in South Florida. And I will never forget that summer where I had actually missed all the opportunity of huge customers in spring and they wouldn't be back for another 9 months. And the next spring, what I did to stay on top of that was I hired up. I made sure I had another person for next April so that when it was gangbusters, and then we saw that wasn't enough, we had to actually open a half an hour early so that we had a half an hour of client calls before the store even opened. Because we knew that if we didn't get through to that list, because it was going to be so busy during the day, we would miss out on those amazing customers for the season.
I think we make these stories in our heads as retailers because you're in it. You're in your store. You're literally in the four walls. And we make these things in our head. And I do this with my business too, where we're like the center of their life. So we picture ourselves, I'm like, why is this customer not coming back? They bought all this merchandise last season. How have they forgotten about us? How are they not thinking about, my store, that they need to come back and shop? And the reality of it is we've talked to thousands of customers about this topic. They're busy. They just moved on with their life. 9 in 10 times, they're like, if you call them or you text them or you send them an email, they're like, oh my God, I need to come see you. Oh my God, I just completely got busy with the kids or with life. They've got busy lives and your reality, you're an important part of their life, but you're not at the epicenter of the core needs of, family, friends, life, school, all that stuff. So a lot of times we find is just you're not being, kind of inserting yourself back in there. That's the number one. That's the number one thing that we see in terms of those missed sales. To your point, Dane, whether it's your top customers or even, the first timers, the first time shopper, and just reaching out to them and seeing how their experience was with your store. Almost always, it's kind of funny. Our biggest fear when people start with ONESHOP is, I don't want to over communicate my customers. I don't want to piss them off. I don't want to when in reality, the biggest risk by far is lack of communication, not too much communication. We've never seen somebody drive off tons of business by over communicating with their customers.
And there are subtle ways to do that too, because if your customers are leaving town, you can stay engaged with them, follow them on social media, like their posts, make them feel like you're a part of their social fan club, right? You don't have to comment or drop them a text message every week just to stay on top of their mind. Just a cute little love that family picture from an Easter picture can sometimes be enough to keep you on top of their mind. So don't forget, just being a human and interacting lightly in between the clienteling visits can also have a very impact on your long-term customer relationship.
And that's the muscle that independent retailers really have at their disposal that big box stores don't. and it's something that they should flex more often.
One of the things that I always remember is, and talking about over communication versus not communicating enough, is customers would always come up to me and say, how could you not have told me about that promotion you were running? Or how could you not have told me that my favorite brand is Nike and you got all your new Nikes in and now it's halfway sold down and you didn't even tell me? So your customer is looking for you to communicate with them.
Dude, it happens all the time when I'm in stores. I know Mel's going to talk about, some missed opportunity things that she sees in business and things you can do about that, but it drives me insane. And I hear it literally every time I go into store, people come in, oh my God, I had no idea that you got a new delivery of X, or oh my God, I had no idea you're on sale, or I had no idea is like the most common saying that just so preventable. They just had no idea that was in store and they needed it.
Yeah, and so I know this seems maybe like it's going to be redundant to a lot of people on this call, but especially as we're looking at CRM, okay? Really making sure, Melodie, what were some of the best practices you had just in the simplest form, which is capturing customer data?
So I did it a number of ways. I did it both online and offline. So we had notes in our point of sale for every customer. So it wasn't just what they had purchased from us. We kept notes every time they would come into the store. She had a baby, her body's changed. She wants things that are looser now, so that the next time we called them, we could leave that personalized message and say, hey, how is your baby? She must be about a year old now. How are you doing? How is your wardrobe? And leave things that were super, super personal. And we had that entire thread. So when I look at a customer who was at my store for 9 years, I sold my store October 2021 to a wonderful woman who's successfully running it today. And she has all that data on every single customer. And she knows every single time they purchased, what they purchased, their size is changing. Like our customers, because we're independent retail, we have these personal relationships that understand life changes, going from being in your young 20s shopping with your mom to getting married to having a baby to now having to go to school, things, right? Like we have the opportunity to travel with someone through their life. And your clienteling, the more personalized that is, the deeper your relationship with that customer will be. And they will go to you continuously, but you can know them at that level without even really knowing them at that level if you simply take notes. But it's not just a note about what they bought or what your conversation was. It's also what they didn't buy. It is so critical to track. This customer wanted more 3/4 length shirts and we didn't have them. She likes solids and we had too many prints. She's an extra large and our selection was small. And I did a lot of offline in a notebook that we kept by the register that anyone could jot it down, customer name, size, missed opportunity, so that we understood how we could just read the story.
And that's a great, listen, I think we're at a stage in retail technology where there's so much that's automated, and especially for all the e-commerce retailers out there right now. I mean, you could tell down to the second how long someone spent on your website, what they were browsing. And so there's such incredible technology out there, but then we go back to some of the simplest forms. And one thing that I, had made sure that all my stores had was just a simple notebook behind the register. So that if you're having an interaction with the customer and something, the sizing of something wasn't fitting right, you're getting comments about a certain product line, what your missed opportunities are in the buys, that was something that we would write up at the end of each day and send to our buying team. And in a lot of places, the buying team is going to be the owner and the salesperson all in one, but making sure it's written down. And I'll tell you what that does, Melodie. We talk a lot about information bias. And one of the things is we may hear something once from a customer and take it as gospel, right? And I think it's super important that we start to see patterns in how our customers are shopping and what they're asking for. And until something rises to a really something that we're seeing, sorry, I have the dog here with the dog toy. Until something rises to, hey, I'm now seeing this 3, 4, 5 times, maybe we could take action on it.
And the 95/5 rule.
Exactly. And before we jump into really the inventory aspect of this, I just want to kind of turn it over to Melodie. As a Management One client, And I know there are some clients on the call, some people who are not, but I think it really applies to all retailers. What were you looking at week after week to track, right? What were some of the things that you were really important to you to track in your data to see how you were performing in season?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I would track. I think the first thing I looked at, and it was a management one report, so I used some things from my point of sale and some things from management one. From my management one report, I would always look at what my percentage of inventory was in a category to my percentage of sales. Because if I had, only 20% footwear, but footwear was accounting for 50% of my sales, I would say, oh my goodness, what do I have enough on order? Right? So I would definitely keep an eye on that. So that was the first thing I said is, do I have enough of what's doing well, especially when we're looking at a month of April or really any month of the year. But what I would then look at is, okay, what do I have a lot in that has a low sell through? And what I would do is something so simple as move it around in the store. I would put whatever category was wind to the front of the store, or I would call it a Mother's Day promotion on tunic tops, or I would do something like that. But if my inventory to sales ratio was not looking good, I would absolutely move things around. So that was one of the reports I used on a weekly basis that helped me. And I always had Allison, who was my person at management one, to call me and say, Mel, you're really low on this. I'm concerned. You're not going to hit your numbers if you stay low on this. Like, can you get a fill-in? Right? So she would help me as well. Or say, Mel, higher sale those tailored blouses. You thought tailored blouses were going to be hot. So she always helped me with that. But on a separate note, I think something challenging for us as independent retailers is our brands want us purchasing 6 months in advance, 8 months in advance sometimes, right?
Yep.
And, management one gives you on the category level of really like critical data. But I also looked at it from a brand level, because if I had a brand and I purchased $20,000 of it in a season, and I had brands that I purchased $20,000 from in a season, I needed to look and say, hey, like from a cash basis, how much did I pay this brand this spring? And how much have I earned? And if I spent $20,000 on a brand in a season, it didn't matter if there were a couple dresses with 100% sell through, if I only made $23,000 at the end of the season on the entire shipment.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to something that we talk about a lot in our education, which is how misleading cost of goods sold could be.
Totally.
And one of the things I implore all retailers is that sales is not the ultimate metric of success, right? And what you're referring to, we want to look at sell-through, we want to look at turn, we want to look at how much stock it took us to accomplish those sales, right? Because that's the real key indicator of inventory efficiency. And one of the things that you were speaking about in that was really the concept of failing fast, right? And I think that is something that we at Management One really preach, right? So if you are starting to notice a slow seller, right, we want to take action immediately, right? And unless you're monitoring, how are my sell-throughs on my on certain items, on certain categories, on brands, you won't know what actions to take. So a really quick action to take is, can I move this up to a more, to a showcase in the front of the store, right? If something's not selling and I bought really deeply into floral skirts this season and they're not selling, what's the first action I could take? Can I move it around in the store? Can I put it on social? What can I do? And then, of course, and we'll get there in the conversation, then we have to start having the markdown conversation at a certain point. But there are actions you could take, but we want to take them in the height of the season before, right, they become an issue. Nick, what is the interplay right now? Because I think this is a really hot topic, right? What's the interplay right now to success in your brick and mortar versus success in your social and e-com, in your digital world, right? Like, how could a retailer who's a primarily brick and mortar retailer, who has a social presence, maybe has a smaller footprint on e-commerce, how should they be leveraging all these platforms to really interplay and really maximize sales here?
Yeah, it's a great question. So without getting too much and into the rabbit hole of like the e-commerce versus brick and mortar sort of conversation and debate of like, what are the merits of these things? Where do they, because we could talk an hour. We could talk an hour or 2 hours or 3 days about that topic specifically. I have a lot of opinions, but so being that, you know, we're a marketing company and we see all the data and we see what we see and what drives business, our perception is pretty simple in that it seems like you're a retailer, and you are a retailer technically by the books. You buy merchandise and you sell that merchandise to customers. But if you are a multi-brand retailer, we would argue that you're actually a service and marketing company, because I can buy that merchandise anywhere. Like, realistically speaking, like I could probably go buy it from 20 other boutiques around the country, or oftentimes if it's name brand merchandise, I can buy it from, you know, a million different e-commerce websites. So your whole value is your customer relationships. That's like literally what you are, is your value is in, you know, Des Moines, Iowa. You are the best at serving those customers, and Nordstrom can't just plop a Nordstrom in Des Moines, Iowa, and they're just going to jump to Nordstrom. So your whole value is the community you built and the relationships and the people. That is literally, in our opinion, 100% of your value. So I would say all these channels, the store, your Instagram, your website, are really just channels for you to build that community deeper, i.e., I'm trying to think of a better way of saying this, but getting your customers' data. It's the reality of the world, right? Like, you need to find a way where they want to actually give you their data so they can get some value from it. So you need to be getting their email and any of these channels, every single channel. You need to be having a call to action to get their email address on their website, on your Instagram, at your store. With text emerging, we do a lot of text, and text is our highest converting channel actually. And you need proper opt-in there. So getting text signups on Instagram, on TikTok, on your website, at the store, you need to be getting all this information and then tying it back to your point of sale to get your purchase information and what Mel is talking about so, you know, astutely about the notes that they say in store and all that stuff. All these elements combine together to your ability to build community. So I would say it actually doesn't matter so much brick and mortar versus e-com versus social. They're all just different channels where that customer is spending their day. They might walk into your store in the morning, go on your Instagram in the afternoon, and then that Instagram clicks through the website with a glass of wine at night to your e-commerce site. And they might have a full day of your store experience. You want to be present there and be, you know, giving them the ability to communicate with you further at every single channel.
And on that kind of idea of them walking into different aspects of this channel, right? They may be walking in on your social, they may be walking into the front door of your store. I would really recommend, and this is something that I see go off the rails a lot, is consistency amongst those channels, right?
Yes.
So let's go back to that
100%.
floral skirt. If that's something that a statement we're trying to push, if we see the sell-through is low, that better be on the front display in the store, on a post in the first, you know, 2 rows on my social, and as a banner on the homepage of my website.
So the easiest way that I think about this is, I think that everybody on this call, I mean, for the most part, for whatever reason, we do a really good job of social media. Like when I go to Instagram pages of our stores, and we always do that every single time, they do an amazing job. Everyone does an amazing job showing their personality, you know, their character, who they are, all that stuff. And then you go to an email and it's like, hello, Dane. Thank you so much for shopping at our store. It's great. Here's 10% off. It's like, we just lose it all of a sudden. So the way that I had to think about it is like, take that, you know, special sauce that you do on Instagram, and how do you, you know, communicate that across other channels? Really, it's your special sauce of being a brick and mortar retailer, or even an e-commerce retailer. If you're a founder, you have personality. How do you kind of infuse that specialness into every single messaging, and then you tweak them to fit the channel?
Yeah,
I just want to say a hack that probably so many people on this call do. And if you're not doing it, like, here it is. Say you're still looking at a size run and you know you've had it 30 days and you're still seeing them, and okay, now more time is gone and like they're still there. I don't know who hasn't done it, but we'd be like, restock alert, bestseller, bestseller. Oh my gosh, if you haven't tried it yet, come and get it. If somebody walks in, why are all these still here? Oh no, they're not all here. We got more, you know, like you got to hype it up.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mal. That's an amazing, amazing point. Is I would say you definitely want to, at every single stage of the game, generate FOMO, even if it's manufactured FOMO, right? Like we always recommend to our stores, guess what? If you bought one size run, there's only one left of each of these items. So the minute it lands, you can say one left. There's only one left of this medium, you know, get it now before it's gone. Because it's true, you have one. They don't need to know that you didn't buy 500. You can just say like, we only have one left of the style, you know, make sure you stop in and get it.
Yeah,
that also speaks to your merchandising too. I don't have every single piece up front with a stack this high. Have 3 or 4 pieces out there. And if they want to ask if there's another one, yeah, sure, I'll look in the back. Maybe we might. You
One
know,
thing
there's
that
10.
I always used to do was I used to put my best sellers, like if there was one left, I would just put it right on the hanger in the dressing room. Right. So when people are walking by, they're like,
Great
"What's this?
idea.
Best seller, last one."
It's a great idea.
But
So I
Melodie,
want to touch on that. Yeah,
I
exactly.
want to pass this over to you because I think that, you know, one of the things that I want to shift this to is, right, like, so we're in the height of the season. Maybe your sales are really good right now. Traffic's really good. Weather's really good. But we want to prevent the lagging pain that you're going to start maybe feeling in, you know, June, July, when all of a sudden this, you know, kind of starts to slow down and we're left with what we're left with. So Melodie, and I think this is what you were kind of about to get at, what can we be doing now to prevent that lagging?
So we have two problems to solve for. The first problem we have to solve for is, hey, this is so great. I had a 80% sell-through on this size run. I only have a 26 and a 31 left. Team, without fail, we know a customer's going to walk in and they're going to want the 27, 28, 29, and the 30, right? Like any size, but the one you have, they're going to want, right? So we have to solve this two ways. When we get down to patchy size runs, we have got to get those bookends or those random sizes out the door as fast as possible so that the customers are looking at what you have breadth in, depth in, right? So how do we get those units out? So the first thing I used to do wasn't a markdown yet, Dane. I'm sorry. If it was hot and I had a quick sell through, I didn't mark it down first. I would pull a list of my customers, everyone that was that size 30, and I would send them a picture, right? This was before ONESHOP. This is before there was the ability to clientele at scale. I would just fire away. Look, I know this is your favorite brand in your favorite jeans, or a brand that you should know in your size, whatever the case may be, right? And I would send that pair of jeans to like 50 customers, right? And see if I could get someone to bite on it. Same thing if it was a size 25 sitting around. I would look around the store and say, are there any more 25s? Can I send them a grouping of things in their size? To a customer, that feels epically personal. It feels so personal. You're like, oh my gosh, they totally picked all that. For me, it's all my size and it's true. And then you just answer it with, let me know which ones of these you want me to put on hold for you. Okay, so that's like number one. Yeah, super curation, getting rid of your patchy size runs, clienteling, making people, it checks all the boxes and it's still full price. The next thing I would suggest, if you're like, okay, these are like a pain in my butt, but I don't want to put them on sale because my customers just bought them at full price. I was so against putting things on sale until management one was like, hey, your turns are terrible. Put things on sale and you'll make more money. Like until management one clued me in, I pretty much didn't do sales. But the other thing you can do if you don't want to take that markdown yet, because the product is doing well, you do want it out of the store because you're getting too many requests and you know you're going to be really just missing opportunities to sell them things. I would say you can, one, go on MaxRetail and post a request from another retailer if you do need one of those fill-in sizes. So that's the first solve. And the second solve is list those random sizes. So MaxRetail is a closed platform where authorized retailers can list their unsold inventory, right? So at the height of season right now, every single day, I see retailers posting requests for products that their brands are sold out of. They don't have any more. I mean, guys, it's April. Brands have cleared of their excess to the best of their abilities. They've sold it to the off-price world. They've run sales on their site, or they're about to in the next couple of weeks. So like, it's going to get harder to get your reorders and special orders filled. But MaxRetail has made it available to you to reach in and send out that message to all other retailers that carry your same brand. We have over 2,000 retailers in our network that are contemporary and designer stores. That is who that is who customer is, because that's who I was as an independent retailer. That's who I've been serving my whole life. And that's who our customer is today. And so if you do need one of those sizes that are missing out and the brand is sold out, post a request on MaxRetail and allow another retailer to offer to fulfill it for you. Someone who is sitting on that random size. And also do the reverse. List the random sizes on MaxRetail. So if another retailer needs that 30 or that 26, they can get it from you. Okay. So patchy size runs, we got to get them out the door so that you can sell the full size runs, and so that you're not constantly spending money on getting reorders, but rather focusing on your new fresh assortment.
Right. And listen, there's not a retailer on the planet that doesn't, the bane of their existence is not that onesie rack, right? That starts to fill up with, your mishmash of goods that are good, great items, right? They're selling, but you only have that one size left. It's sitting there. So
it's so painful. It's so painful, right? But like, you also, I mean, it's also, guys, like onesies, retailers ask me that all the time. They're like, can I list onesies on MaxRetail? I said, absolutely, because on MaxRetail, it's no longer a onesie. It's your last 26. It's another retailer's 27 and 28. It's another retailer's 29, 30, 31. Somebody else's 32. Somebody else's 24. And together, it's a beautiful size run. It's just available in different locations. And that's what I love. And that's why I do this every single day, because I love allowing independent retailers to have that luxury that a department store has to phone a friend.
So one idea that I was tossing around with some of our retailers, because I had heard it from somewhere else at a larger retailer. And this is going to be worse economics than listing on MaxRetail. So you absolutely should go to MaxRetail first. Do this after MaxRetail if you need to, which you probably won't have to. But I think it's a really cool idea. Like at the end of the day, this is all just math, right, guys? Like, and Management One is the best at this, at helping you figure out what the math of your inventory is. But I had a couple retailers, and they're going to try it, so I don't have any statistics on it yet, of doing they would call it BOGO. So like a buy one, get onesie. So they're going to put a rack of onesies in the back, and you get one thing full price, and then you get a onesie for free with it. So if you look at the math of that, if it wasn't your top selling core style that you're just turning through nonstop at full price, you're probably not going to sell all of it at full price anyways, right? You're going to sell it at 10%, 20%, 25% markdown. So if you do the math of that, yeah, you gave away an item for free. But if you do the margin of like, okay, you were going to sell it at 70% off regardless, if someone would take it eventually, or 50% off regardless, it actually works out where you're only taking like a 20% hit on your margin on the two items together. So it actually ends up being like super profitable for you, and you're clearing through that inventory. So I really like that idea.
Nick, I would shop that sale. Would shop that sale. So if any of you retailers decide to run that, you let me know.
Mel. I also would shop that.
I want in on it.
And I think that this is the lesson here, right? And I'm gonna bring it back to kind of Management One philosophy. That is, we don't want to hold on to this idea that we have to protect our margins at all costs, and we're sacrificing the cash back in our pocket, right? And so there's a really fine dance we need to do there. Obviously, we want to sell at full price. Obviously, we want to see that get the most mileage possible, right? That's the goal. But when something isn't working, as who was it? Kenny Rogers said, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold.
Know when to fold them.
You need to know when to get that cash back in your pocket so that you can go and spend it on more productive inventory. And there's ways to do that, right? MaxRetail is a solution, right? These are all tools that you have to have in your toolbox as a retailer. And I think the lesson here is, in season, it's hard to kind of step back and remember that, because things are going and you're selling and you're selling, you're fixing the air conditioning, you're doing a million things, but we really need to keep on track of all this. Melodie, were you gonna?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what you don't want to happen, and I see this every summer, you don't want to get to June and July and have suddenly this ridiculous 70, 80% off sale that you could have prevented by just being more aware. I know it might take a couple more minutes in the morning before you open, a couple minutes after you close to look at the data. But if you're understanding what's not performing, where your onesies are, MaxRetail gets you paid 90% of your wholesale cost back, right? We can do that when you're proactive. But if you're bringing us a fur coat in July, it's going to be a little harder to get you 90% of wholesale. So if you list it, but I see it every summer that retailers will list something in July that a retailer needed in April, that a retailer needed in May. And so just look around. If it's a dog of a size run, get it listed. If it's a single onesie that you can't get reorders easily on, get it listed so that another retailer who needs it can get it now, right? And we send out a weekly email with all the requests of your brand. So if you're too busy, because we actually have a patent around our request fulfillment, because we had so many retailers say, I don't have time to list, just tell me what you need. So you will get an email every week that shows you what other retailers need of your same brands. And you can just click a button that says, I have it, I'll move it, right? So.
And I want to talk, because we've mentioned reorders a lot in this, and I want to talk about something very kind of pointed. And if you're someone who is really kind of vigilant on your DCS structure, your department class, subclass, right? I think the default is reorder, right? Something worked, let me just get more of that thing. And I think for someone who is working an open to buy plan, right? Whether it's with Management One or I don't really know how else you're doing it, but if you're working an open to buy plan, right? We want to see that you're not reordering just into a certain style, but that you're giving your customer the right amount of goods in the category they're looking for. And let me give you an example, right? I'm going to kind of go back to a floral skirt, right? If that's a big trend this season, a long maxi floral skirt, if that's a big trend that's hitting your store, your customer is not just coming in for that one specific one that you bought, right? And when it sells out, you just have to reorder that one. They're looking for like and kind, right? And as Nick so astutely said before, you know, if you're the big specialty boutique in Des Moines, Iowa, right? You are the arbiter of fashion there, right? So what you're ordering back into is, how much dollars do I have to spend in a category, and making sure my customer is getting what they want, not just feeling that pressure to reorder one specific style. That's not how someone shops.
I do have a counterpoint to that. I agree with that 100%. I'm not going to disagree with you.
It's only, yeah.
There's only one answer, and it's your answer. That's the only correct answer.
No, go for it. I want to see if we have the same.
So what I'm going to say is, so because I've been having this conversation on the flip side of this, which is everything you just said, 1000% agree, 100%. But I think the flip side of that is we also see the other mistake happening, which is you just have this killer blue A-line dress and it just crushes, or a jacket or whatever. And because you love fashion or what, especially for fashion retailers, you're just tired of it. Personally, you're tired of it. You don't want to see it anymore. You've been selling it for 2 years. I got to like do something else. I'm the fashion arbiter. I'm going to shift their perception. I think that's super hard. When you have a cash cow, you should juice that thing until your sales are literally like I mean, this is a part of understanding the numbers that if they're on the decline. Yes, you want to find something else. This is why core works so well, right? It's like core. I've seen core styles work for over 10 years and they consistently turn and burn nonstop at full price. So I think you just want to make sure that you're not, are you in one of those camps? Are you in the Dane camp, what you're talking about? Floral dress, I would call fashion. Like I don't think there are any floral dresses that are just like for years and years and years, unless you're like Lily Pulitzer. But if you find that core style, you got to make sure also that you're not aborting too soon if it's selling strong. So I think the caveat is, things that maybe the reorder is a fashion versus core conversation, I think sometimes, and you don't always have to reorder like Dane said, but don't just not reorder if you have the ability, just because you want to change it up in your store and you want to add something new and fresh.
I'm going to weigh in on this as a
Melodie,
tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Tiebreaker, let's go.
I'm going to tie break this, and it's in the data, guys, because the scary thing about core is you can get real comfortable looking at it. You can get real comfortable. Oh, that's just always here. Oh, that's just always here. If you don't truly know how many turns you are getting on that product, you could get too comfortable. So no, like I will never forget, there was this Gerard Durrell Bolero, and it was the most magnificent thing. And I had it in black and I had it in white, and I think I sold over 200 pieces of it in a course of 2 months. So that's an example where Nick is true, right? And what happened, I had customers who I was pre-selling it. What I was doing is I was pre-selling it. Like I had one, I'd be like, oh, I can't sell that to you today, but you can try it on if you want it, right? I was literally like holding on to it for dear life so that I could pre-sell more of them, right? I didn't just buy 200 units, I booked them, right? Whereas I've had other times I've been very ambitious with like, like say like an Easter dress, right? And it's like, oh, I can run this through, maybe I got in for Valentine's Day and I'm like, oh my gosh, every woman loves this. I could also probably do it for like Easter or Mother's Day or, all these different things. And really I could have switched it out. It didn't need to be the same dress. I think you just really need to look at the data and make sure it's not a core product rent, like taking up real estate. and that it's really paying dividends.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to point out, which is a big differentiator here, right? There are certain things that your customer will not sacrifice on. So I'll give you a great example. When Swell bottles, remember Swell bottles when they first came out, it was the biggest thing. If you wanted a Swell bottle, you were walking in and that is all you would buy, right? And now there are many variations, and one seems to be the hot one each week, right? There's
It's all about Stanley water bottles now.
Stanley.
If you don't got a
now,
Stanley, if you don't got a Stanley, what are you even drinking out of? Are you even drinking water?
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
I have a Arctic.
Yeti was another one.
Does this mean I'm not cool?
Right.
You gotta
exactly.
get a Stanley water bottle now.
But if you are going into a store for a Swell bottle or a Stanley bottle, and that is not there on the shelf, you are not settling for anything else. And it's really important to recognize when you have that product that your customer is not willing to sacrifice anything for, right? That they want that and they want that only. And when there's a difference between the category that's doing well and how much stock you need in that category, how much dollars you have open to buy within that category. And I use the example of, we always used to have the hardest time with denim shorts, right? There was always this point where you had this very small window to sell denim shorts. And by the time you hit, and they would sell into, June, right? Because someone comes in and it's really hot outside, they want that pair of denim shorts. But after a certain threshold, like after July 10th, not one person will buy a pair of denim shorts because they're already thinking it's the end of summer, there's sales going on and they're done. So how to come out of a season clean, right? And that's the risk you run into, right? If those denim shorts are selling, you want to make sure you're buying enough so that it will last you through the season and that you're not going to get stuck reordering or having these big, kind of drops that are going on. And then you're stuck with, denim shorts up the wazoo with no one buying them. Now it's different in Florida, Melody, but in
I was going to say, just list them on MaxRetail and we'll buy them all in Florida. It's fine.
But that's a great situation, right? If you do get into a position where you have overages, we do have solutions, right?
Yeah.
But
that's like the number one thing we see is the seasonality between territories and how, it's hot in Florida, right? Faster than it's hot up north. So we get spring goods before the Northeast does. So we're over them a lot quicker than a Northeast store who's just getting their spring shipment. So that's why it's easy for us to send goods to other territories through MaxRetail. And absolutely, we see a lot of customers who are in resort towns. People in Petoskey, Michigan, Montauk, right? Like little resort towns that have a very short window, and we support them in their off season to clear it out so that by the time the customers come back again, it's not still there because nobody wants to see it there in Petoskey again, year after year.
Yeah. And, I know we're talking about a lot of this through the lens of fashion apparel, but any seasonal business is being affected by the same situations, right? And the seasonality is going to look different for each vertical and each type of retailer. But the core here is that when people come in, they want to see fresh goods, they want to see newness, and they want to buy into that. I do want to talk about markdowns real quick because I do have one piece of advice here. And one of the things that I hear most from retailers is, I don't want to be viewed as a markdown store. I don't want to be viewed as a promotional store that just everything's always on sale. That's not the image I want. And I think that this is an important lesson to learn here, right? Which is, if you have, and I know we don't love this expression anymore, so if we have a better term, please update me, cool kids. But if there is a dog, right? There's a style that's just a dog, right? It just is not working.
I thought you meant a literal dog.
No,
sorry.
No, it's just a dogma style, right? It did not sell. We brought in, 3 packs of it. We thought it was going to hit, and just those bell-bottom jeans didn't come back, and now I'm sitting with them on the floor. I would rather see you take a markdown after 45 days of it not selling, or the sell-through is below 50% in the height of a season, and just have it on one small markdown rack in the back and create demand for that product. Instead of coming to July and then having tons of excess goods that now you have to take a huge space in your store to dedicate to those markdowns, right? Create the demand. Your first markdown is your least expensive, and just filter it out unassumingly on the back rack. It's a powerful tool at this point in the season. And I know we don't want to think about markdowns now, but we do want to think about those styles that just didn't hit, like say goodbye.
Dane, I think that we're missing a really important call out here though. And that is, you have a relationship with your brand. All right. And like Dane and me and Nick have all had calls from our retailers about stuff that didn't perform.
I was just going to say that.
And like, if there is a dog of a style and you haven't sold any, you better be telling your rep. And if you have that notebook and you're writing down it and you have those proof points that we had 20 customers try this short on, and the thigh width is just not doing it for anyone. Like if you have that, especially if it's a fit problem and you have customers who have tried it on, that's why keeping that notebook there is so important, because you might need it. You might need those proof points. Do not be amiss when there is a fit problem to leave it out of the conversation until you're seeing your brand at the next show. It is their responsibility to ship you good product. Sometimes it's going to be fit, sometimes it's going to be preference, but either way, it is your brand's responsibility to work with you as your specialty store to make you successful. Because at the end of the day, and I saw that one person had this question in here about cost of goods sold, you know, I'm going to go back. I am going to go back to that brand and I am going to say, listen, I got $20,000 from you. I've only made $23,000 off of you. I need you to take back these two styles, you know? And I think that if you don't include your relationship with your brand, then, you know, you're missing an opportunity to build that relationship, see where they stand and understand how much risk you should take on that brand next season.
Especially when they try to sell you something.
One of the things that we see, Dane, too, is super scary, but retailers thinking that they can just hold the inventory until next season. And they're like, oh, it's fine. I'll roll it out next spring. Nobody will notice. What negative impacts of sitting on inventory for 12 months can we tell the audience here? I mean, in addition to tax burdens and
taxes and really the biggest one, which is just people see it. People see it. People see when you go into a retail store and you're looking at the same things that you looked at, you know, 6 months. I mean, I even think 3 months is too much. Like if I go back into a store and I loved what you had to offer and I come back in and I'm seeing the same stuff, the mannequins look the same, you know, it's a killer. Nico, I see that we have some questions and I want to get to them. Okay, the first
I want to address the one that Melody touched on, because it was something that I know, Dane, you've mentioned in some of the talks that you've given across at the various trade shows, and that's the fallacy of cost of goods sold. So why is cost of goods sold one of the most misrepresented metrics that you can look at?
Yeah, and I see that Greg here wrote in. So Greg, I'd be happy to. We do a lot around this, but the short answer here is your cost of goods sold are telling you just that. It's measuring the performance of the goods that sold, but it doesn't record two really important things. How much did it take? How much did you have to purchase in order to sell those goods? How many are still sitting on your floor? So you could have a really great margin on the goods that you sold. You sold them all at full price, but you still have 20 more sitting on your floor, and your cost of goods sold isn't taking that into account. So instead, we look at cost of goods purchased, which is actually a better measurement of the efficiency of your inventory, because it's starting to take into account time. And Greg, I'd be happy to kind of walk through that and show you what that looks like. So
I would say regarding the retailers who are closing, we help retailers all the time so that you don't have to go to like 90% off in store to try to get rid of stuff or like have it in your garage for the next 10 years. So I would say if you want to reach out to MaxRetail, you can talk to one of our colleagues. We don't charge any monthly fee, any membership fee, any onboarding fee. It's just 10% of what we're able to help you sell. And we can start by helping you get your cost. Go through wherever you see your high season, run through it. But you can start picking up the ones like we've talked about today, the dogs that have not moved at all, and your random onesies. And that way you can still make your full price sales to the most of your abilities. And then we can support you with getting rid of the rest. And we do have a lot of stores that end up closing and still keeping their MaxRetail store live until the inventory is dispersed, just because they're getting such a higher payout. than what a really terribly discounted sale can do.
So Nick, I know this was conceptual, but Dana is asking a question about the sale option that you discussed, buying one full price, get the second one free. And I'm assuming Dana runs this. She says we end up with a lot of ones. How do you do that when items are different retail prices?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a pretty simple answer. So, I mean, listen, BOGO is not a new thing. If you go to any store, Macy's, Nordstrom, they do BOGO all the time, and it's always of equal or lesser value. So you would just, I mean, if you have a rack where for some reason it's the most expensive merchandise in your store and nothing else is the same price, you can, finesse the numbers a little bit. You could do, you spend this amount and you get this amount from the rack. Or you could do, if you spend $200 and you pick an item for $500 from the rack, you just take $200 off that price on the rack, and then they pay $300 to offset the difference. It should never be just, obviously I buy a $50 item and I get a $300 item from the rack for free. You can just do, equal or lesser value and then balance the numbers out that way.
Yeah, and there's a lot of creative ways of doing that.
Totally.
There are so many creative ways. I've skinned that cat many different ways.
Absolutely.
And Nick, I'm sure you would be happy to lend your time. I'd be happy to lend your
Yeah. If you want to hop on a call and just I mean, like, even though it's a conceptual idea, we do all the time, like, strategy calls like this, where we just brainstorm, like, let's look at your numbers. Let's look at what you're selling, your average, unit sale, your AOV, stuff like that, and like back into what the right sale would be. So happy to have a call and talk about it.
By the way, one of the most interesting things, and we tried this at my retail store, and it works like a charm. We used to sell a lot of socks, right? And people would buy one pair of socks, and we wanted to encourage multiple buying. So a pair of socks was, let's say, $3. And we would say, we would put a sign up 2 for $6. There was no discount. It was just 2 for $6. And people just thought, oh, okay, I have to buy 2 to get this deal.
Dude, I'm a stickler for this. I catch people all the time where it drives me crazy, but no one's doing it because they wouldn't do this if it didn't just do this way. I go to fast food restaurants where they'll be like, buy the bundle, and I'll add the 3 things together. I'm like, the 3 things is more than just buying them individually. It's like genius, but it's a little skeezy, so don't do that. But I mean, it is genius in the sense, like, it does work. The word bundling or 2 for $6 or stuff like that. People love free stuff.
I have one more tip that I used to do because, you're in the height of season. And hey, eventually it's not going to be the height of season. Something that I used to do to get my big customers who were in town like all year back in store is I would use the clienteling information. How much did they spend in my store on an annual basis? And I would say, what can I give them to get them back in? And I would just be like, hey, Susie, just realize, like, we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary this July. I have a special gift for you. I want to gift you a Go Silk blouse because I know it's your favorite brand. Susie would come running through the door to get her free Go Silk blouse, and she would spend $2,000 more. So if you know how much your customers are worth, if you're looking at the data, right? If you are paying attention to that clienteling, you'll also know what you can give them. Maybe it's one of those units that didn't sell. Maybe it is that last onesie that you need to get out of the store. If Susie hasn't been in 6 months, she doesn't know it's your last onesie. Susie thinks you had it aside for her. So you can also use that as leverage to get big customers back in store, is to say, hey, I know they're worth it. I know when they walk in, they spend this much. And this item isn't making me money on its own. It can yield me that customer's return. And that seems to be like I mean, I know Dane's and Nico are going to wrap up, but it seems to be the overarching theme of this conversation is, we all have tools that can help you, go implement these things. But really, if you take a step back, the first thing to do any of this stuff is you need to know your numbers, and you need to know what those numbers mean. You can't market 100%. To them if you don't know the numbers about, what you can spend in discounts to get them to come back to you. You can't list on MaxRetail unless you actually know, like, is it a dud? Is it not a dud? Is it age inventory? Is it not age inventory? You can't plan, you can't go buy inventory unless you know your plan and you know what you can spend in different categories. So realistically speaking, like, that's what I think that's my takeaway from this conversation is spend more time with your numbers, know your numbers, know your data. And make decisions based on those data. Yes. So I see we have, Nico, I could run through these real quick, some of these questions.
Well, the first one, I think, so Yassine is asking a benchmark question. They are in a Western store in Texas, and they want to know what the average turn and sell-through number is for Western apparel. So one of the good things about Management One is we work with thousands of different locations across the globe, and we do have the ability, if necessary, to pull together some of that data. I would just recommend, Yassine, reach out to us and we can look in our pool of data and see if we can come to some sort of a number. I know we do have an average turn broadly for retailers, but specifically for Western, I'm willing to bet our data team could put something together for you, but it would be a much more unique turn. Dane, do you want to take the final one there? Because that's definitely in your wheelhouse. I think that's more of an IMU slash
Yeah, so
markdown question.
First of all, I think that, do we explain that customer? So basically this customer is asking, we have a very small town, it's cool weather, and they start selling spring really in June when the customer comes in. They want to know what's on sale. Here's what my recommendation would be. No, you never let the customer in on the behind the scenes. You're never going to win an argument with the customer based on logic. It's just not going to happen. Well, our margins are this, like you're never going to have that conversation with the customer. Here's what I would say. Look for ways to do a promotion where you gain something. Okay, so you don't want to just mark down the item, but maybe you want to say, you know what, we're not running sale now. We're at the height of our season, but if you give us your email address or your phone, mobile phone number, you could get 10% off your entire purchase. So what I would say is you don't want to just give a discount just to give a discount, get something in return, because you don't want to, you're never going to win an argument with a customer or kind of, win it with logic. It's just not going to happen.
One thing on that is, and you can totally DM me after because I'm super passionate about this topic. If you don't have enough IMU on your item to put it on a 10% sale, I think your math is wrong. Like either you are, unless you're a restaurant on this call, unless you're like literally selling, food, that's a different industry, which I know has lower margins. If you're selling anything that's a hard good, if you can't put it on 10 to 20% discount and still make margin there, either you need to be marking it up way, way more, or find other vendors that allow you to mark it up way more. It doesn't seem like your math is quite correct on how you should be selling the merchandise potentially. So it's hard to tell because anonymous, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't have the link up in front of me,
I
but
would
Dane did a
say-
great presentation at Magic talking about IMU in these inflationary times. While you guys talk, I'm going to see if I can find that.
Yeah, don't be
on our
afraid.
YouTube channel.
You can raise your markups, right? Like there's a lot of opportunity to increase your IMU, and whoever the anonymous attendee is, I don't have your name, but I wish you would reach out. I'm going to put Nico, will you put my name in the chat, and me and Nick will follow up, and Melodie, I'm sure you have some ideas. I'd love to talk this through because I have a feeling Nick was dead on when he said something maybe a little wonky in the math, and we can help solve that.
But I would also say, make sure that you're doing research on the brands that you're buying ahead of time and see if those brands are doing some ridiculous sale in June. It's going to be super hard for you to compete with that. So I think you just need to look at your brand assortment and mix in like a Patagonia or a North Face with some lesser known ones that are not doing stock. That way this brand, this is really rare, super specialty, not available in department stores. Nope, actually they do monthly drops. This is the June delivery, right? Like I think you can counteract it by really doing research on your brands and making sure they're not undercutting you, because it takes the breath out of you when that happens.
Absolutely. Well, as expected, when you collect this much retail knowledge in one call, we did go over a couple of minutes. I do apologize. And thank you for the folks that stayed on for us. If you do have a question that wasn't addressed live here, we are going to send a follow-up email with the recording and some contact information for each of our panelists. Please feel free to continue the conversation and shoot us a couple of suggestions. What do you want to hear from Management One in the next Retail Roundtable? Because we design these free sessions for you, the independent retailer. What's top of mind for you right now? So please feel free and respond to the email that we send out and let us know what's top of mind. What do you want to hear from us in the next session? Close it out, Dane.
I just want to say one thing to close out. Nick, I thought that was a great takeaway with really letting your decisions be driven by data. I think that's so right. And, one, as part of the Management One team, we're so lucky to have partners that have tools for our retailers. And there's always going to come a fork in the road. And we have wonderful partners that could provide you with some great tools for your business. But what I want to say is, and there were some topics, if you noticed, that we had disagreements on, or we have a different way of viewing it, or we each had our own approach. And that is so important with retail. The more you are in your own bubble and you're in your own silo, right? This is where the growth happens. When you have a difference of opinion, when you have a different way of doing something, when you try something new. The thing that will kill any retail business is, I've always done it this way, and I'm going to continue to do it this way, and that is the only way I will do it. An adaptation is the key to progress here. So thank you everyone for joining. Thanks everyone in the audience, and we will follow up with calls to action. And it was great seeing everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome. We're cheering for every single one of you. Bye.